All right, so now we're officially recording, and let me share my screen. So, our agenda today is Params party. Hey Gideon, welcome. And I don't know how many of you guys have attended Params parties yet, but this is my first one hosting, so go easy on me. I think you're in good hands. If not, Mitch said that he would drop in for support. Cool. And thanks for that extra yes there. Okay, so let's get started. First of all, welcome everyone. I want to say, let everyone know that everyone who's attending will receive a POAP, which is super cool. Let me quickly just take a screenshot so I don't forget. And then I want to ask, who here has already used the Commons configuration dashboard? Has anyone already used it? Okay, cool. And Eduardo is driving. That's why his video is off, and he may not answer sometimes too. What about you, Edgar Web3? Have you had a look at the dashboard yet?
Yes, I see.
Oh, cool. And of those of you who've used the dashboard, does anyone have a favorite proposal? And did you submit a proposal, or do you have a favorite proposal? Okay, cool. Okay, so I just want to share basically what we're going to cover. Maybe speak first about the overall timeline. There's a forum post with the overall timeline. We have extended the dates, which will use the dashboard to allow more people to participate and to learn. It's been a really extraordinary learning opportunity for our community. So between now and Thursday, December 16th, this dashboard, we're going to continue to have these educational sessions. We're going to continue to encourage our community to use the dashboard. Hey, Jean. And submit proposals. And then from the 17th to the 21st will be the time to vote. So all token holders will cast their vote. And based on the outcome of that vote, we will have 3 to 5 runoff proposals that go head to head to maybe head for the runoff vote that will be in the beginning of January. Christmas is, of course, like the Christmas winter holidays is, of course, kind of a dead time. So that will be just time for creating materials to facilitate the comparison of these different proposals for the voting community. Okay, so what we're going to do today is walk through the dashboard. Then there'll be about a 15-minute break, which I'll probably play some music on, where everyone will actually take their hand or take some time to create their own proposals based on what we've just talked about. And then if anyone feels comfortable presenting their proposals, we can do that. If not, I can present some proposals. Mitch always loves to present some proposals, so maybe it'll be him that does it. Welcome, Mitch. And then at the end, that part I really think of as like workshopping. If you write and a bunch of writers get together, and instead of workshopping our material, we'll be workshopping our proposals. Okay, so this is the dashboard. I want to start from the beginning, actually. Okay, so we're here in the TEC, but it's actually the Commons staff that built this dashboard. It's the dashboard that all future Commons will use to design their economies, the same way the token engineering is the first community to use it to design ours. And this is collaborative economics. So I think everyone here is pretty aware, maybe not Edgar Web3 so much, since you're relatively new to our community. But the background on what we're doing is we had a hatch, which is a warm token offering. We say it's a way to attract and balance labor, expertise, and capital. So attracting people who want to put in effort, experts who have some specific targeted skill to apply, and then a way to raise capital. We've assured that only value-aligned, trusted people hold tokens. Those are the people that are called the token seed. And through this hatch mechanism, we've raised 1.5 million wrapped X DAI and have around 2 million tokens in the supply so far. Now it's time for this entire community of hatchers and TEC community to design the parameters that are going to affect this economy that we're steering. The entire community can design and propose, and then it's the hatchers that will use their tokens to vote on the final proposal. So everyone has seen these visual explainers before. We're really at this process now where we're submitting and voting the parameters for the Commons upgrade. And that's where we are, and this is where we want to be. So these are the 3 modules that we're configuring, as well as the token freeze and token thaw, of course. So some sort of parameters outside of these modules themselves. Okay, so when you first start the dashboard, there is 4 learning modules. Each has its own tutorial. I'm not going to go through those. We're going to jump to configuration here. But if you're interested in learning more after this 1-hour session, you can always come back to go through each of these learning modules. There is some sections that have, here's the tutorials, that actually have someone speaking. I think it's Lauren, who will read out the parameters and descriptions. But we're going to go straight to the configuration now. So just orientation on the dashboard. There are these little rollover tooltips that explain the parameter, and if you click on it, it will take you to the forum for the explanation, the more detailed explanation of that parameter itself. At the end of this dashboard, we will the parameters that you have set get bundled together into a GitHub issue and get sent to GitHub. Maybe I'll save a little bit of that for later. And I see new people joined. Hey Wonka, hey Yunesi. Cool, and welcome. So definitely Wonka has submitted proposals because I've seen him advocate for some. What about you, Yunesi? Have you had a chance to submit a proposal yet?
Yes, I created one. I submitted one. I can find the link.
Cool.
Very good.
Cool, excellent. Okay, so let's start with the token freeze and thaw. This is pretty straightforward. The token price that hatchers paid was equivalent to 1 wrapped X DAI for 1 TEC hatch token. Then this opening price will basically set the price that the augmented bonding curve will sell the token for. So the augmented bonding curve is essentially, we'll get to that in the next one actually, in the augmented bonding curve section. So the opening price is just what people will pay against the curve. So, there's a few things here, right? If we want to set this really high, right? So the opening price will be $10, and all of the hatchers immediately, 10x their investment. This is sort of a way for the hatchers to set our own time preference. Like, we're declaring what our time preference is. We're saying what the opening price should be and how long the tokens that we've acquired through the hatch will be frozen, and then how long it'll take them to thaw. So I don't remember what the defaults are on this. I've been playing with it a little bit, but you can say that I think the price should open at, I don't know, let's say it's 3 wrapped X DAI. The tokens should be frozen for 2 weeks, and then all the tokens start to thaw out, and the thawing process should be another 10 weeks. And what you would end up with is essentially at 3 months, the floor price of the tokens is 0. And this is not so great for all of us because, it sort of defeats the purpose of this economy, long-term sustainable economy that we want. So let's say we do something more like 26 weeks and the thaw is 130 weeks. and we have an opening price of, I don't know, 125. We see that the floor price of the token, which is basically the collateral underlying the entire economy, is floors after 160 weeks. So close to 160 weeks. But until then, this economy is supported by these frozen tokens, which serve as the collateral for the economy. So we could play around with this a little. Is there anything else I want to say about that? Oh, yeah, I guess we'll see later on that no, sorry, I'm looking at my notes because I'm doing this with notes. Okay, I guess this is good for now. As we go through them, we can, I think I can answer some more questions. But is there anything else I want to say that I think is important here? This chart down here shows at what period of time a number of percentage of tokens is released. So with this kind of scenario, with a short to medium token freeze, it's about half a year. And then a year, 2.5 years of a thaw, so slowly thawing out over time. We could see that after a year, only 20% of the Hatcher's tokens will be available to sell. And that after 2 years, only 60 of them will be available to sell. And then after 3 years, finally, the entire 100% will be available to sell. Okay. So if we move on to the next one, it's the augmented bonding curve. A bonding curve is just a smart contract that mints tokens when you send money to it. And bonding curves are generally supported by the underlying collateral. So here we again have this sort of opening price. It just takes whatever the price is from your last section, but if you change it here, I'm assuming it should change everywhere too. So you can play around with the price, and now you could play around with this idea of what we do with the initial funds that we raised. So how much we want to allocate to the common tribute. How much we want to, no, hold on. No, we don't do that here. Yes, we do, the commons tribute. So the commons tribute is what percentage of the total funds we want to put in the common pool. And that also determines what percentage of funds we want to be the collateral for the curve, which is called the reserve ratio. So let's say we want there to be a small amount of, or 40% of what we've raised to go to the common pool, which essentially supports projects. So that is what conviction voting will use to fund projects and to fund any proposals that request funding. And then the reserve ratio that will be left over is here. So you could see what percentage of reserve is left over, what percentage of the total raise is in the reserve ratio, and then how much that equates to. I have been lately playing around, inspired by the casino themed proposal, to look at something like a pretty high tribute, commons tribute, to see what that will do. Some things here to point out is that the reserve pool you could look at as kind of a volatility buffer. And you can sort of see that as you play around here. The higher the commons tribute, the less funds that actually are in the reserve pool, right? So there's sort of this balancing scale. And the lower the reserve pool, the more volatility we would see. You can sort of start to see that in these big purchases. Okay, so maybe I should say what this is. So this table is a simulation of different transactions. So there's 11 different transactions. This is the first one, which is the initial buy. So we know for sure that the proposal for the Dow to buy 250K of its own tokens at the instantiation of the augmented bonding curve has passed. So this is going to be the very first buy. So we can see that once the augmented bonding curve launches, and this buy happens basically in the second following, that the price of the token will change from 250 to 458, and that's a 27% slippage. What that really means is, I think it's actually spelled out really nicely here, it's the difference between the current price and then the average price. This is because there is not a lot of funding for the reserve pool. We could see these numbers start to dampen as we lower, maybe we do something like 60%, which would leave 40% in the commons pool. And these big swings, so this is a simulation of $1 million, 1 million wrapped XDAI buy of the token, which would of course have a huge percentage change or slippage. You can create your own simulations if you wanted to, I think you can. Okay, well, we used to be able to create our own. Maybe this is no longer a functionality that's working. But we have 11 here that can sort of give us a good idea of the kind of impact buys, which are green, and sells, which are red, would have for the bonding curve at these prices, at these parameters settings. I hope that's clear enough. Okay, the entry and exit tribute, these are essentially, well, this is the A in augmented bonding curve. This is what makes the funds that come from buys and sells filter into the commons pool, which then goes to have more funding available for proposals. So, for example, if you were to buy if the entry tribute was 30%, then whatever sum that you use to purchase tokens, you would receive 70% of that, and 30% would go immediately into the commons pool, and that tax would go to fund new projects. The same thing with the exit tribute. So if you were to then sell your tokens back to the curve, you would receive the funding minus the 10% that goes back into the commons pool to fund new projects. So it's a way for there to be continuous funding of proposals. It's also interesting mechanism that sort of dampens downward pressure. So if there is a large sell-off, then what ends up happening is the tribute keeps filtering into the commons pool, so the capital in the commons actually gets larger and larger and larger, and then much more interesting to govern, which would then imply that people would want to come and buy because now there's this large pool of capital to govern. So it has some interesting properties. And I think that's one of the points of why we can explore this today, is to sort of learn those trade-offs. Okay, is there anything else I want to say about this? No, okay, so I'll move on to the Dow voting. Okay, so what's important here is that this is similar to our Hatch DAO. It's just a DAO. And these are the votes that can change anything about the DAO. So one of the use cases is, for example, we want to change the parameters of the augmented bonding curve. This DAO is how we would do that. So if we wanted to change the parameters of the augmented bonding curve, how much support would we want? So how many yes versus no? Would we want there to be, would 51% be enough? If 51% of the community voted yes and 49% voted no, would that be enough to change the parameters of the bonding curve? Or do we want something more strongly signaled? Our Hatch DAO, I believe, is 88%, with 8% quorum. The quorum is essentially what percentage of the token holders need to vote. So let's say we have, let's say keep the number simple. We have 100 token holders or tokens. What percentage of that need to vote yes in order for it to pass? So if only 10% need to vote for it to pass, then it would be 10. Vote duration is the number of days. So these are pretty standard. What's new here is delegating voted period, quiet ending period, and quiet extension period. The execution delay is the same as we had in the Hatch tribute. So the number of days after the vote passes that it gets executed. And there normally needs to be some amount of delay just in order to prepare for whatever kind of operation will then take place, since it is usually, almost certainly going to involve something to change in the smart contracts. The delegated voting period. So this is essentially the date after which the delegates can no longer vote. So new for this Dow is the ability to delegate your votes. So you can give your votes to somebody else to vote for you. And those delegates have a period with which they have to vote. It can be set as the same to the vote duration. It can be set as less than the vote duration. And then you just see here in this chart the time to vote on proposals, the time to review a delegated vote, and then the time between the proposal and the passing, or the ability to execute what was passed. So I guess I'll leave these at the same. And okay, so quiet ending period and quiet ending extension, these are new too. So these are just to sort of, I think to catch any scenario where there's a vote that flips very suddenly at the end. So if there is a yes vote and it suddenly flips to a no vote, then there's this period, this number of days that's added to the vote. And if that happens again, then there's a quiet ending extension that's automatically added to the vote. And I imagine it's just to sort of create some time in case there's like a wild community swing, and or it's maybe one person who suddenly bought a bunch of tokens and is trying to manipulate the vote. And that's that for Dow voting. And then lastly, requesting funds. So this is how we decide to spend money. Conviction voting is interesting because there are no votes. There's just the amount of tokens you have and the amount of time you've spent committed to a particular proposal. So everyone has a certain amount of tokens, and they can allocate a certain amount of tokens to different proposals. Or they can allocate, to one proposal and not be able to stake conviction on any of the others. So conviction builds up slowly and sort of degrades slowly as well. You could imagine like a faucet dripping. And so here the spending limit is what is the maximum proposal request for compared to what is in the commons pool. So the spending limit would be how much may I request as a percentage of what exists in the commons pool. So if there's 100,000 wrapped XDAI in the commons pool and the spending limit is 10, I couldn't request more than 10,000 wrapped XDAI. So the question here is a balance of do we want to be able to support large asks or large funding requests, or a lot of small funding requests? The minimum conviction, oh, that's nice that it took us right there. Oh, so you can also click on those and it'll take you right there. So the minimum conviction is the amount of tokens needed to pass a request for an infinitely small amount of funds. So if we play with this a little bit, the curve gets really, really wonky. And we can sort of see on the bottom that if we try to, let's just say 3 days, 7 days. So after 7 days with these, with a 10% limit and a 2% conviction, we could see that these requested amounts, so somebody that requests 1,000, 5,000, or 25,000, with the commons pool having 100,000 or 750,000, and this effective supply, would require these many tokens staked for 7 days in order to pass. So that's that's a balance there. So for example, if there was 750K in the common pool, a 25K funding request would request 108 staked tokens for 7 days, and then it would pass, and those tokens would be released to stake other proposals or to back other proposals. Conviction growth. Okay, so this is just how long it takes the conviction to grow by 50% of its previous. Okay, so the best way to use this is to start playing with it. And we are about half of the hour. Let's see where we can. I'll bring this here actually. And if we go into the GitHub repository for Commons config proposals, and also let me just drop that in the Communitas channel right now so everyone can jump in there too. Oh, I'm just seeing your message now, LBS. Okay, the dashboard is this tool, and it is a tool that we're using to configure the Commons upgrade. The Params parties is just the thing that we're calling these sessions where we explain this dashboard. And then the hatch is the fundraise that happened over the summer. That was a closed fundraise of trusted seed members only. Does that explain it better, I hope? Okay. Cool. So I'm gonna share, I dropped it in Communitas. If we look at these existing proposals and we take one, you can scroll down and you can see the parameters and the reasoning for those parameters. So the person might explain why they chose those parameters. This one is a fork of the TEC Casino with a longer resting. It's interesting to go through, but what I really want to show you is the link at the bottom. So the fork this proposal will open up your dashboard and it'll import all of the parameters. Oh, great. So you'll start with somebody else's parameters and then you will modify them to what you think might be more strategic. Maybe you saw this parameter and you really liked the token freeze and thaw, but you thought the opening price should be higher, and you thought that the Commons tribute at 95% was a little too high, so you thought 80% would create more stability for the bonding curve. And then you thought, okay, the entry and exit tributes are low, and I like them being low because that will incentivize more people to come in and out, versus high tributes, which might disincentivize people to come in and out of the token. So I think we're going to set aside 15 minutes for everyone to take a proposal from the config and then play around with it for 15 minutes, and then in 15 minutes from now, my timer will go off, and we will either share our proposal or somebody can present one at the end. Does everyone feel comfortable trying this out? It might take you out of your comfort zone. It took me out of my comfort zone the first time I tried it. Okay, so we're gonna have to find some music. I'm gonna look for some music. Can I just get a signal? Is everyone ready to do this?
Hey Tam.
Yeah.
I have one, so just one question, and if this is too big of a question,
Shoot.
just feel free to develop it. But one of the things I've struggled with a little bit is trying to figure out what the future source of demand for the TEC token will actually be like, because I was trying to figure out how quickly the community will actually be, how quickly there will be demand emerging for TEC tokens. So I don't know if you have a quick way of answering that.
I mean, I can share some initial knee-jerk
question.
What?
Yeah.
I can share some initial thinking that I've had around it, and then I'd invite a few other people to as well. It's really what is the value proposition of the token, right? There's a value proposition to early investors, which might be, hey, I really want to support this, and I have a little speculative bent, there's two things. There's there's the just the support for token engineering. So there's that like speculative, but also really deep in public goods and wants to see this succeed and would love to see the benefit at the end. There is people who just want to see token engineering succeed, right? Who it might be, strategic alliances that we have with a lot of the token engineering organizations and communities who are much deeper pocketed than we are, who might be interested in doing token swaps, who might be interested in just straight out supporting initiatives, who might be interested in participating in our governance by picking up some of the TEC tokens. And then, I think that those are the two that I've really identified, like impact investors and strategic alliances. But I'll pass to Mitch, who's done some thinking around this as well.
Just like why people would buy TEC tokens? Yeah, well, I think Tam kind of said it a lot, like there is a speculative spin, like when any token initially launches, and people will buy the token right off the hop just to simply speculate on the price, but also like the TEC is just getting started, and so the proposals that we make and the tools that we build for token engineers and token engineering will be financed in part by the funds that we create, and also will give value to the token, because the token represents not only our speculative value as an organization, but also it will have governance implications as well into what projects we fund within token engineering. So people would buy the token because they're interested in the projects or the tools or the initiatives that Token Engineering Commons is making. So it's based on the future value that we will eventually produce.
Matt, that's really important. That's pretty critical to be honest. That's a huge opportunity in itself to not really mislead anybody, but you can quite heavily imply there's going to be some really neat utility to come out of the fact that you get to participate so early in the engineering process and part of it. Not just capitalize it, not just speculate on it, but there'll be some additional utility function for the token that will be created based on proposals to come to the team.
Yeah, definitely. Does that answer the question more or less, Petey?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you. All three of you. That's perfect. Thanks.
All right. So I'm going to just check in on a few of you that I can't see. So Edgar Webb 3, how are you feeling about opening a fork and playing around with the configuration?
I see it. Well, I think it's a little bit pretty complicated. I don't know. I'm like scared, but I can try it. I need to learn a lot, but I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, do it. Definitely do it.
Thank you.
Cool. And LBS, how are you feeling about opening a fork and playing around with the parameters for a few minutes, 10 minutes?
To be totally honest, we might come up for a couple months now. I still don't really know enough about token engineering commons, and economics is not something I understand. I came here to help with the onboarding stuff. So I'm kind of already at the edge of my capacity. It's good for me to like be here and like hearing about this and being exposed to this for the first time. But I don't know if I really understand anything enough to give me a play right now.
I would say that you could, like, the dashboard's free, you can just go around and click all the buttons and like you won't really break anything important. So it's like it's there just to play around with, and like depending on your knowledge level, some things might click and some things might not, and whatever happens is totally fine.
Really?
Clicking is free. Mitch. I like that, Mitch. Welcome, Durgadas. Nice to see you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Morning. network outage nightmare. So
Oh
I'm
no.
finally back on.
Just in time. So Communitas Weekly is hijacked by a Params party. So we just did a walkthrough of the Commons configuration dashboard and are now taking some time to submit proposals. So we have about 9 minutes left, and then we'll spend some time maybe talking about 1 or 2 or even 3 if we speak fast. Have you, what's your experience with the dashboard so far, Durgadas?
Oh, well, I leave that to people who know what they're doing. Let's put it that way. It's all very confusing, and I get that you guys are trying to empower me and educate me and everything. I just don't have the bandwidth to be empowered or educated. Just being honest. So yeah, it's a little too complicated and technical for my amount of time I have. So sorry. People keep trying to include me. I'm like, no. So thank you.
Well, you're super welcome to hang out and listen in anyway. All right, I'm going to try to get some music on. We have about 8 minutes left. So if the music's loud, you can mute it. It's called, the bot is called right click to turn off, I think, to turn down. Sorry about that. How are people doing so far? 3 minutes left. Feeling good? Anyone excited about their proposal? Want to share it with in this workshop? Is that a hand, Gene?
I was behind the shell. Alright, I got a couple locked and loaded.
Cool. Well, I think I'm going to just take one more minute and then I'm going to submit this one. I'm liking what I'm doing with this. It's very different than what I've done before. What was that, LBS? LBS, I heard you say something, but I didn't catch it. Oh, maybe it wasn't. Hey, Nate.
Yeah.
I want to ask your opinion on the minimum conviction, because I feel like you have an interesting perspective on this.
I like it really low, but if you do it really low, you have to make sure the conviction growth is really long, just to make sure that you're not spammed by a lot of small proposals that can take away a lot of funds from the comments. So it's just there is a protection there.
So the benefit if it's really low and then the conviction is many days is that a lot of small things will pass quicker, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
large proposals struggle to pass?
They don't struggle to pass. It's just easier to pass if you have a small conviction, minimum conviction. That's just designed to protect the least amount of tokens that need to be staked in order for a proposal to pass overall. So if 2% of the entire total is staked, then it's eligible to pass. Any proposal is.
Oh, got it. All right, oops.
I'm sorry, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, that answered it perfectly, actually. Thanks for that. Well, it kind of answers. So, yeah, I think it answers it for me. I mean, and high conviction voting would be like 10% would be pretty high, right? That would seem like very difficult to ever pass, even with a low conviction growth. I don't know. It seems like things are still possible here.
Well, I mean, they all kind of work in tandem, right? So not one parameter necessarily decides everything definitively. Because if you put that conviction growth down to like 1,
Once we open up the bonding curve, or is that like an ongoing balance that is maintained throughout time? Like an ongoing percentage?
Yeah.
it's just the one time how much of the hash funds go into the common pool.
Thing.
No welcome to.